there's an implicit call right now for CEOs to speak up and say, I'm not going to use AI to automate people out of jobs. I'm going to use AI to make people's lives better.
AI is speeding everything up, but it's not making decisions easier. If anything, it's doing the opposite. So today, we're getting into what AI actually looks like inside organizations, how leaders are using it, where it's helping, and where it's creating more pressure. Welcome to Ctrl+alt+disrupt. I'm Stephanie Rosenfeld, the Global Head of Content and Corporate Communications at UST. And I'm joined by Bianca Buckridee, VP of Product Marketing at Infios, someone who's right at the center of all this, working across customers, products, and strategy in one of the most disruption-heavy industries out there, supply chain. Bianca, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Me too. So let's get into it. AI is supposed to make things easier, but for a lot of us, it actually feels like things are getting, what do you say, more intense? That it's not removing pressure, but it's compressing it. So from where you sit, where does AI feel like it's increasing the pressure rather than reducing it?
Yeah, I've been marketing AI, believe it or not, since 2015. So I started marketing AI when the buzzword was digital transformation. And you had things like digital workplace. And we started telling the stories, not just to end users, but to CEOs, CIOs about the potential of AI, particularly machine learning at that time. That was the one that resonated the most. This was before ChatGPT hit the market a couple of years ago and really changed everything. But what I found is that the tooling and the technology has only sped up the pressure within the workplace. So there's a lot more data. There's a lot more insight from that data. Companies are using machine learning, generative AI, et cetera, to speed up how decisions get made. But what I found as the pressure increases, you just have less time to think critically, whether you're using Teams or Slack or Google, right? Like always pinging, your email is always pinging, your phone is always pinging. There's just a ton of signal everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you tend to start to lose maybe your perspective on what you should pay attention to. Right? So as we get more tools, we're becoming a little bit more dependent on the tools than maybe using our own judgment to decide what actually matters in the moment. So you see the ones that are sort of surviving the signals. And in supply chain, there's so many signals. We are in supply chain execution, which is when a moment of disruption hits. So think a calamity, some sort of geopolitical event happening, or maybe a distribution center gets torn down and you've got to reroute your decisions very quickly, like in that moment, to get the product to the end user, which is the consumer. And so what we do is provide those actionable steps so that the machine is acting for you. But at the same time, you still have to have human judgment in there. The human still has to say, this is the right distribution center or the right store to reroute to. This is the right truck to use or use this modality. So I think from a societal perspective, we've got a ton of signals and we're having to relearn what it means to think critically alongside with the machines.
Yeah, and you're leading right into kind of where I wanted to go next. So we hear a lot, and it's so loud, the noise that AI is going to replace roles. But I think, as you're saying, the reality is a lot more nuanced, right? AI recommends, but humans have to be the ones deciding the things.
Yes.
So where do you draw the line between what AI should do and where humans need to stay firmly in that control?
I actually just had this conversation with my friend's daughter who is studying graphic design in Boston. And she said, I feel like AI is not making it easy for me to have that typical American experience, which is you go to college, you study your major, and then you do an internship and you graduate into that major. And she said, is AI, going to replace me? And I said, it's not. Number two, when you look at the potential of the human mind, the creativity is really boundless. It's so imaginative. And we need perspectives like hers to contribute to not just the world in the form of her art, but especially in corporate America, we need people with very distinct perspectives, bring their lived experience to the table so you can make the right decision for the company's growth. I don't think that AI is going to outpace humans. I think it'll continue to take all of the information that's out there and package it up for us to be able to take that signal and that decision and move forward. Now, there are some areas where AI can really just kind of replace the manual, redundant rules. Like you think about the
Sure.
use case of intelligent document processing. How many of us log into our company's intranet and we go to the search bar and maybe we want to find a holiday schedule for a particular geography, right? And then the results, instead of bringing you the most current up-to-date holiday listing, it'll bring you like 18 pages of things that just have nothing to do with what you're searching for, right? That's a really easy use case that AI can have an impact and make things easier for us, right? I only need the one search result. So there are some ways that AI can really just reduce manual stuff. But at the same time, I think as leaders, especially in marketing, we should be bringing up the fact that when we're making decisions and we're sitting at the table with executives, we should be bringing up the human perspective and we should be asking those questions like, did we automate the right part of the workflow? That's the criticality of the human mind, bringing that perspective to the table so that we can make the right decisions.
Yeah, and I think to bring it to marketing specifically, where you and I both sit, right? A lot of people are talking about AI in marketing. It's just about content, more content, faster content. And as a content person, this is going to sound odd, but that's surface level, right? I think the real value in AI in marketing is clarity, not content. And kind of what you were just saying, it's about the automation, it's about making things more efficient. So, where's AI actually showing up in your day to day as a product marketing leader?
Yeah, so we have been trialing a bunch of different tools to see how it fits into the PMM. So whenever I begin with a team, we draft a PMM playbook, right? And it's sort of, the team's operating mechanisms. And then recently we've had to add AI, right? I don't believe that anyone wants to read an AI perspective on a particular topic. It's fine to use the tools to generate the ideation, different tactics that you could use to move the story along. It's fine to use AI to generate the data behind what you're saying in your story, the statistics, the reporting from analysts, et cetera. But a human still has to sit down and write the material for it to be beneficial to someone who's going to be reading it. So, for instance, on my team, when we're talking, the topics tend to be around supply chain execution, which is a new category that we are helping to define. And as you do that and you're building awareness, people want to read real perspectives from people who are real supply chain operators, big box stores, small to mid-sized stores, and what that process looks like as they modernize their tech stack. What are the challenges that they're facing? A lot of companies have invested in their tech stack. They don't want to rip and replace. They don't want to do a re-implementation. So they want to have that modularity of being able to choose the technology that works for them in the moment that matters the most for them. So when we're writing content, we're starting with maybe leveraging GPT for short form content, Claude for maybe looking at it from a long form perspective. What are the things we need to make sure that are in there? But the team itself is doing the writing. We're putting the story together and making sure that we're fact checking and that we're bouncing it across others, because these personas are also different. In transportation, you have shippers and you have brokers and you have third party logistics. Order management is really actually the most exciting one. It's moving at a velocity you cannot even imagine. But think about telling the stories of someone who has been maybe selling like an artisan product, right, on Instagram. And then overnight, maybe a celebrity retweets or shares about them on TikTok and they go viral. And all of a sudden now they have to make a decision. Their supply chain warehouse has been in their garage. And now they go from maybe hundreds of orders to thousands of orders. So how do you spin up a supply chain overnight? Those perspectives, AI can only tell one component of the story, but being the human and having to walk through the decision making and the trade-offs that come when you go from a small merchant to a large merchant overnight, those things cannot be automated. So with my team and I, as we work through our PMM playbook, we're making sure to leverage the prompts that give us the right information from a competitive standpoint, a persona standpoint. We're looking competitively to see what's happening across the market, not just for supply chain, but for tech. Every day there's a new model and there's a new tool. So we're staying on top of that. that. And we're benchmarking those prompts across different AI tooling. But at the same time, I do emphasize to my team, we don't want to produce content that is very technical, jargon driven, right? It needs to be written by a human from a human perspective.
I couldn't agree more. And I say this with my team all the time, right? You lose a sense of authenticity with content.
Yeah.
You have to personalize it. You have to make it real. The other thing that I just want to zoom in for a second is just because it's faster doesn't mean you want more content, right?
Right.
It's all, for me, again, I'm a content person, but this is our reality. And I think we're looking for from AI, and correct me if you think differently, is the timing of it all, right? So how can AI change the way we think about the relevance and the timing of messaging and not necessarily just the creation of this content?
Content matters in the moment where the user is searching for information. And you dial it all the way back, the B2B buyer's journey has really changed. They no longer contact sales. The paradigm maybe 15 years ago, they really started leveraging their online resources, right? A principal source of that was your website. Now they can actually build an entire RFP comparing you, your established competitors, and the startups in the area, right? And others. And they could build that RFP using a ChatGPT or a cloud. And so the buying committee has done their research already. They will only pick up or send you an email to contact them if you're on the short list. So you look at before you were able to participate in the RFP, right, and answer the questions. They're only now coming to you if you're on the short list. That buying committee has already decided 2 to 3 are participating in there. So content really matters in that buyer's journey. And you really have to map out, like, from the start of the funnel, and maybe the funnel is actually outdated now that I think about it, but like from the beginning of their journey all the way through, if they do end up signing with you, what are the different content touch points? I believe quality over quantity. So someone who is potentially looking at purchasing a warehouse management system or a transportation management system, those are very complex tech stack that a supply chain operator would have. So what's meaningful to them at that particular journey? For some, it could be checklist. What does the modern supply chain need to manage disruption that hits pretty much every day, right? And we talk about this all the time. There's pre-COVID and then there's post-COVID. And if you look at what happened in supply chain during COVID, if you were not a merchant that had been investing in your tech stack, let's say, for example, microservices, plugging an API in so that a consumer could see, hey, this is actually in a store 3.2 miles from me. That would incentivize the actual purchase. If you didn't really have that system set up, you didn't thrive post-COVID. And so you think about, supply chain now, the disruption every day is the reality. It's not a limited event for a sustained period of time. It's just every single day. So when you're hit with intensity like that and you're looking for solutions, we really try to think about what's going to help them understand the reality of what they're facing now, today, in the moment, but also think about a couple years from now. And it used to be that you would tell them 10 years from now. No. 1 to 2
days from now.
1 to 2 years is the max now, right? Because we don't know what's coming from AI in the next year.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're talking now about systems of action rather than systems of record, right? Yeah. It's a really important idea. So we're not building better dashboards. We're building, what would you say, faster decisions, because the world is moving so fast. So tell me a little bit, in your world, what does that look like in practice?
Supply chain planning is what a lot of people know about supply chain, right? There's the planners that sit down and they do the inventory. They make sure the warehouses have the inventory. They make sure that there's a transportation method to get that inventory to the stores so it can ultimately get into the consumer's hand. That tends to be based on a lot of historical data. And of course, technology has been used to get more predictive, more analytical about that data. What we're positing now is moving from that system of record, a bank of data, to a system of action. So using that data to take action with as limited human judgment as possible for especially the manual things. There's always a story I tell. At my last company, there was a swimming team in Australia. They literally, every swim meet, would write down the results on paper pen to paper, and then they would take it back to their offices and somebody would transcribe that data into Excel. That is still the reality for a lot of people. We're still going from paper to Excel. And because the dashboards, when you look at it, doesn't sometimes give you the view that you're looking for, right? But imagine as a marketer, you could go in and there's one dashboard that's full of all of the things that you're doing. Website metrics for product pages. You could see the engagement and see if something is tanking or if something's taking off. The different campaigns, you could prioritize like 5 campaigns and see the progress there. Seller enablement. How is sales reacting to the content that you're building? Imagine that you had this really powerful dashboard that showed how product marketing efforts are being measured and tracked across. That would, like, if you logged into that every day, you could actually see the effectiveness of what you're doing and be able to, in that moment, make a decision of whether to boost something or to maybe reformat it. So for supply chain, imagine that. Like, you've got products that people use every single day, and being able to go into your system every morning and see what's moving, what's not moving, give you those decisions and say, hey, we already saw overnight that these trucks were not going to make it to Georgia because there's inclement weather. So we rerouted it through this method. Like, you could breathe a sigh of relief. So moving from a system of record, I think we've got the context on data. Now we've pushed the boundaries of like insights. And now we're saying we actually want that data to act for us. And so there's so many applications, whether you're in marketing, whether in corporate communications, PR. I mean, think about how fast the market moves, and being able to stay. I sometimes can't keep up with the news of OpenAI added a new model, Anthropic added a new model. There's these data centers that are springing up. Like, there's so many things that you have to take into consideration of your role right now. And the same thing happens in supply chain. There's so much that's happening. How do you stay on top of the news that matters the most? That's a core fundamental thing. So I think a system of action really helps you to be able to have the machine take the actions, and when human judgment is necessary, alert you to that so that you can go in and say, hey, we actually want to do this instead of this.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, the technology's here, right? The opportunity is really obvious and clear. So, why do you think organizations aren't moving faster? It seems like AI transformation, it's more of like a cultural problem rather than a tech problem. So what do you think is getting in the way?
So for supply chain specifically, they have sort of this reputation or perception for being tech laggards. It's not about the technology, it's about the storytelling for the technology. Supply chain operators generally are in front of the consumer in some way, and they are looking for assurance that AI is not going to automate them out of the industry. And so there's a couple of different levers from there, right? I don't want to be automated out of my industry.
Sure.
Secondarily, they love their job. They love what they do. It's very meaningful. So for them, it's not just about automating them out of the job. It's they feel that AI is going to automate them out of the community. And it's a sense of purpose. It's a sense of what I do is really worthwhile. It helps my community, especially eating. Food is love. So how do we introduce AI to our customer base in a meaningful way, right? And so the way that we've chosen to approach it is we're building you a system of action, things that can automate the stuff that you don't want to think about, that you don't want to spend 4 to 6 hours a week working on. But we're building it in a way that helps you get closer to your consumer, right? Helps you contribute to your community. So I think, as much as AI can have negative impacts as well, and I think we're all having that conversation at large in our homes and in the boardroom. What is our responsibility as people making the decisions at the table about AI now? And how do we build that in a way where we enable an AI assisted workforce versus like automating everybody out of the workforce? I mean, if you do that, where does that leave us as a society? You have to think about those implications. So, I've seen, of course, the reports where, CEOs are saying they're going to automate X percentage of their development staffing or engineering resources out, or they're going to, automate marketing. I'm sure people think my role will be automated, but then I also think I'm just a fabulous human being, and you can't use a machine to build another Bianca.
I love that.
Good luck, because if you do, I'm going to go live my dream of buying a school bus and picking dogs up, taking them to daycare, and then taking them back home. I'm not afraid.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's bring it home with this.
Yes.
So AI is accelerating everything, right?
Yeah.
And leaders, but just to your point, right? Leadership's about judgment. And if we had to leave our leaders with one shift that they should make now to get value from AI, what's the one thing?
I think leaders should be looking at how AI augments the workforce versus removing roles. I don't think that's the right focus. I think leaders have an implicit responsibility to lead us into this next generation of technology and really look at their company, look at what's driving growth, and look at the levers there. What is a good percentage? I don't know that it's just about like a percentage of like AI can do this and my people can do this. I think you really have to look at your company and say, this is our mission. This is how we grow community. This is how we impact consumers, right? This is how we impact society. And maybe I'm asking for a little too much because I know CEOs tend to think of, growth margins. But I think there's an implicit call right now for CEOs to speak up and say, I'm not going to use AI to automate people out of jobs. I'm going to use AI to make people's lives better. And then look at the workflows itself and then implement AI there. I don't think AI should be automating, for instance, software development life cycles. It can speed it up for sure, increase the accuracy, but we still need people coding.
Absolutely. That's exactly it, right? AI is changing the pace, but the real shift is how we make decisions when the pace doesn't slow down.
Yes.
Bianca, this was fantastic. Thank you for the conversation.
Yes, thank you.
I truly enjoyed talking with you. And thank you everybody else for listening to ctrl+alt+disrupt. Follow us on ust.com and wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time.